What up, guys? The Yellowtail bite is absolutely going off. It started about early July and it's still going strong as of today, August 14th. I'm doing this little video slash podcast. I just want to go over a couple things. If you guys are kind of new to the area, looking in to get into some of that yellowtail fishing, what kind of tackle recommendations and things that are working right now. We'll go ahead and jump right into it. So we got surface irons. A ton of guys been catching them on the surface irons. It's been pretty much any way you want to catch the fish. They have been catching the fish. So I'm going to have a couple rods rigged up with a surface iron or something like a 6X salsa that I can cast or that I can drop down and crank straight up like yo-yo style. Either way, I like to have one rod with a casting jig, one rod with like a salsa. And as far as colors goes for the irons, the darker colors been working a little bit better. Sometimes when they're chewing the paint off the side of the boat, doesn't matter. But usually what I like to do is have, if I'm going with a couple buddies, some guys will be fishing like a blue and white, like a lighter color, and then I'll fish like a scrambled egg, like a yellow or a darker colored. And then once one of us kind of catches a fish, then we'll switch over and start fishing like the scrambled eggs are all blue and whites, something like that. So if you're going like on a sport fishing boat, pay attention to what is catching fish. Don't be afraid to ask people, hey, what color, what size, blah, blah, blah. That'll help you put the pieces of the puzzle together faster. As far as casting jigs, also got the Colt snipers. For yellowtail, it's usually right on the surface. We're not fishing, in the deep water, so you can get away with 60 or 80 gram. You can use 100, 120. It depends on what works better for you as far as casting. If you got a little bit heavier rod and reel and that 120 or 100 gram size cast better for you, use it. But you can definitely get away with like a 60 or 80 gram. I personally think 80 grams like the sweet spot. Just my opinion though. There's a couple different models. We got this Mustad Masashi jig, and then Colt snipers. As far as colors go, I like sardine, like a green, something like that. Katy Perry's been real popular, like a blue and pink. I honestly have like 20 Colt snipers of just this color because I've caught a ton of fish on it, tuna and yellowfin alike. If you're doing some trolling, if you're heading out to the island or just moving spots, one of my buddies, he's been catching some nice yellowtail on these Rapalas. Yozuri makes some, Nomad makes some. Something about this size though, color again, blue and white, green and white, something like that. Don't get too wrapped around the colors, more so just the application. If you're trolling them, I like to set them at different intervals so they don't get tangled up. If you do take a turn towards a kelp, something like that, I usually run one short and one long. If you're fishing off a center console, if you're fishing off sport fisher, just do what you can to not get tangled up. Usually they're just pulling like 4 top lines, so you shouldn't have any issues pulling a deep diver. Now, if you want to do like a sinker rig or flatline rig, I think 40 pound or 30 pound. I typically run 40 pound. I've got my ass kicked by yellowtail more than any other fish. Any way you can lose them, I've lost them. Sea lions, kelps, wrapped around the anchor line, just getting tangled up with other guys on the boat. I have lost a ton of yellowtails. So I run 40 pound exclusively, Seaguard Gold Label. Reason for that is a little bit heavier line, but it has a diameter of 30 pound. So yes, it's not as light as 20-25 pound test, but it's a little bit thinner. I have a little bit more strength. That way I can put a little more pressure on them, get them away from the kelp, anchor line, tangle, that type of thing. I run 40 pound exclusively for yellowtail, just my opinion. Some guys say you'll miss some bites. I'd rather land more of the fish I hook than get a couple extra bites and lose half of the fish. It's really discouraging, when you lose a fish where you couldn't turn them away from that sea lion or whatever. I think the gold label is worth that extra couple bucks for it. It's what I use for all my fluorocarbon. As far as circle hooks go, I'm a big fan of the Owner Muto circle hooks. Right now, I think you probably just need like a 1. I use 1 or 1/0 more than all the other sizes combined. Sometimes when you get in like a smaller grade tuna, you're going to want to downsize to like a number 2, number 4. But as far as yellowtails go, I'm going to go with a number 1 or 1/0. And then if you want to hook the sardine, if you just want to throw that sardine as far away from the boat as you can, If you're using a spinning rod, I like to nose hook them. I go straight up. Then you can really fling that sardine and not worry about, you know, him flying off the hook because you're casting it too hard. If they're kind of boiling behind the boat, you know, feeding on that live bait chum that the guys are throwing, my preference is to back hook them and then back third on top, because I think when they're looking up at it, they can't see as much hook, or butt hook it. Either way, that's, you know, back 1/3 but on the lower half of the body. Any way of those, or any way you're hooking those, is fine. If you're fishing a sinker rig, I would definitely recommend, get myself hooked here, I would definitely recommend fishing it in line with the nose or across the nose. I typically fish it in line with the nose because when he's sinking down, you know, on a torpedo weight, if you're hooking like this, his mouth might blow open because that weight's taking him to the bottom, and then he's not going to look as lively when he is there. So I always hook him in line with the nose, out the top, and then that way his mouth stays shut. He swims in line. If you hook him in the body or something like that, he's going to twist on the way down. He's going to twist your rig up. So that's why I think it's extremely important to hook him in line. That way he tracks down, his mouth stays shut, and I think that's the best presentation you can do for like a sinker rig or dropper loop rig, however you're fishing on the bottom. One last tackle recommendation would be like a swivel, unless you guys have a solid knot for your braid to mono or fluoro, go with that. Some of the lighter fluorocarbon, though, I've had issues with the braid because I fish usually 50 to 65 pound tests for yellowtail. So this is 80 pounds bro swivel. I know my knots are better with a swivel. Some of you guys might have a great knot. It's cool, whatever works for you. Everybody has a different way of doing things. I typically like to run a swivel just to reduce line twist, and I know those knots are solid, and I'm not going to have any issues. If you guys have any questions about kind of what I went over, or if you have anything that maybe I missed, just hit me up, shoot me a message on Instagram at Obseadian Fishing. I do this podcast on Spotify, Apple, put the video out on YouTube. So however you guys are listening, I appreciate you checking the video out. Until next time, guys, later.